Welcome back, folks. This is Tony, the Hero of Flanders, running you through Europa Universalis 4. We've been through a couple of the areas. We've talked about spending monarch points. We've talked about how you mess with your estates and cause yourself all sorts of trouble. And now it's time to talk about your provinces themselves. What we can see. This being our capital, there's no estates controlling this state, this province. We get taxes, we get cash coming straight to us that is dictated by the amount of development in the administrative area. We get production and trade, which are controlled or dictated in a combination of the amount of development that you have for production, but also by the good that I think it's a good, the goods that you produce in the province. And you have manpower, which is dictated by the amount of military stuff, military spending that you've done in the area. In this case, it gets a bonus from your from it being a core, from power efficiency. Yeah, so each of these dictate how many what comes out of the province at the end of the month. So we get 0.79 ducats of tax. We get 0.34 production, and that makes a total of 1.14. So of our income, 1.14 ducats comes from tax and production in this place alone. Now, there's also money that comes out that comes to the state from trading. This is a very complex thing that we'll come into a little bit later, but just be aware that the amount of development that you have, the amount of production development that you have in a state dictates in some way the value of the goods that you trade and how much is produced. All very tricky. The third thing that we have is manpower. Now, manpower and supply limit. Manpower comes from that directly, but also from the place being a core, which we'll come to later. Has to do with, and the supply limit is also dictated by the amount of development in the state. So what we can see here, we get a development bonus of plus 46 because this is at 23. This is at 11, we'll get a bonus of, come on brain, 22. And this is 14, we'll get 28. There's also terrain differences, so we get a bonus from hilly territory. We get a big bonus from farmlands. I don't think we've got any any mountains. No, we don't. We get a reasonable bonus from the woods. It's the same as the hills, isn't it? Both 6. 5 from hills, 6 from woods. So depending on the type of territory that you're on, or grasslands, what are they? They're 8. That makes sense. So that's the supply limit dictates how many armies can walk over an area, over a province at a time. Back here we have 27, so that's more than double what we've got for our army of 13, so we get 0 attrition. We'll come to the attrition later. That's a tricky part of another tricky part of the game. Other things of note in here are unrest. So unrest is dictated by a vast number of things. Our legitimacy is one, which we'll come to later, and our tolerance is another, which we'll come to later. Don't think we'll have any unrest in any of our provinces at the beginning. No, so I can't go into that too much. We do also have autonomy here. There's no autonomy neguses in any of our in our core province, but when we've handed a province to an estate, they add automatically. They make the minimum autonomy of a state 25%. That's the case for everywhere now because we've added everything to an estate. All of them are at 25 minimum autonomy. What we did see in this one is that it's higher than 25. What's happened historically before the game began, I assume, is that Picardy was taken from someone else? From Picardy, apparently, who don't currently exist. They've got a grayed out icon, but these people here, it doesn't say where it's coming from. Doesn't say where the autonomy is coming from, but we can reduce the autonomy using, or increase the autonomy using these buttons. If we press this button, we won't be able to do it again for another 30 years, and it will increase the neguses that we have here. So at the moment, because we've got 33% autonomy in this province, we get negatives to our trade power, our efficiency, our production rather, our manpower, our sailors, our land and naval force limit modifiers. If we look down here, limit modifiers are different from supply limit. So that's the amount of people that are willing to join our army and navy. These two stats here, we'll come to those later. What we can do to reduce that autonomy down by 8 points is press this button here. We'll decrease it by a maximum of 25, but because the clergy control it already, it will only go down to 25. It will also increase our unrest by 10%. So let's do that. I scrolled over here before and had a look. We've got a good amount of bonuses to unrest. So our unrest is less likely because of our high legitimacy, which we'll talk about later. It's reduced by the clergy being in control of the state, of the province, and controlled by our tolerance, which is to do with the religion. We'll talk about that later. So now we've reduced we can see that our shipbuilding and our recruitment times are reduced by having unrest, but more importantly, something else has appeared up here in our must-dos, which we haven't even got to yet. That's that one there, the province unrest. We'll examine that shortly. What we have done is we've reduced the autonomy down to the minimum 25% that it can be, so we're getting the most production that we can out of this state, out of this province. The close-eyed among us, unlike myself, will have seen that the manpower increased, the sailors increased, the trade, production, and tax will have all increased here as well. Another modifier to this is the culture. The culture in this province isn't accepted, so I have a feeling maybe that's where our core unrest, our core autonomy came from. No? Okay, regardless, this culture here is in the same culture group. When you're in the same culture group, you get only a small negus for having that different culture. If we look at Wallonian are accepted. If we look here, Burgundian are our core culture, it's our primary culture. Wallonian is an accepted culture, and Francien is not. So what we'd typically do is if we valued this province enough, which I definitely do, and I will be doing this in the future, is spending diplomatic points to persuade the population to change their culture to one that we more readily gel with it'll allow them to interact better with the other people in our nation, and it will cost 135 diplomatic points if we go to Wallonian, because Wallonian is the culture here, or 180 to go to our primary culture, to go to Burgundian. There's no reason particularly to go Burgundian here. It's cheaper to go Wallonian. A good chunk of our states are Wallonian already, so there's no reason to go for anything else other than that. What we can see is that negative 25% bonus is explained there. The culture adjacent to Picardy, Wallonian is a culture adjacent to Picardy. So that's what we'll do in the future. And what that will do is it will increase our tax. Well, it'll remove that tax negus, it'll remove the negus from the manpower modifier and from the sailor modifier. So that will go up by 15%, was it, for tax? That'll increase by 15%. Other things of note in here are the religion. All of our current areas are Catholic. That will be the case almost everywhere's Catholic around here. I think we saw some. Where did we see some Orthodox? There we go. Orthodox religion in the bottom of Poland and in the bottom of Lithuania. Actually, in most of Lithuania. Interesting. So we won't be dealing with the religion for the moment until a little interesting event called the Reformation happens. So that's all of those areas. We can use these buttons here to do recruiting of either normal regiments, which come out of our manpower pool, or much more expensive mercenaries who don't come out of our manpower pool, but they cost a lot more and they cost a lot more to maintain. 53. Let's go with infantry. I will usually use some mercenary infantry. So 30 ducats for one unit, and 0.52 per month for one unit, as opposed to 10 and 0.2. So they're a third cheaper, and they're 40% of the monthly cost. These guys make way more sense, but each of these that I hire takes 1,000 men out of our manpower total, and that's not a huge total. We could, given that our entire army at the moment is 13, and we could double our army quite happily, and it will increase by 171 a month. But as you can see, the reason for perhaps choosing infantry, which are the most common troops and the troops you'll use the most of, from mercenaries, makes some sense. But I'm probably getting a little bit distracted here. Let's focus more on the actual province itself. In this province, because it's on the edge of a sea, we can actually build ships here as well. So that's something we'll look at doing likely in the near future. What I haven't explained, what I will explain through the rest of this is this area here. So there's a lot to go on here. We'll go into the HRE in another video, but that's an important thing. We'll go into coring and client states later. Actually, client states aren't too tricky to explain. You can create client states which give you... No, that is quite tricky. I'll explain that in the next one. We've explained all of that. We've explained the province war cost. You can scroll over this, and it's more important for when you're warring on other places. But if we were to attack France, that province war cost is the amount of... You want to get it to 100 war cost. to 100 war score, I should say. When you take provinces, it increases the war score, and the closer you get to 100, the more likely they are to just say, yeah, okay, you're in charge. If we took, what's that? This won't be happening ever, or well, this won't be happening for a very long time, but let's do some quick maths. 14, 21 is, God, I shouldn't be trying to do maths. 14, 21 is 35, 41, 51, 84, and 100. So if we took these 5 provinces from Paris and held their armies, you also get war cost for you also get war cost for battle. Sorry, you get war score for battles. This is war cost. This is war score. So taking this province will give us 21, and if we win all our battles as well and take these 5 and hold them, France would accept a peace with us. The cost to the war score cost to take them is a different matter entirely. We'll talk about that when we come to it, and it definitely won't be France, because France would just roll over us at the moment. What we can see is there's also fort levels. We've got 0 forts in those 3 states, but this little icon lets us know that there's a fort here. We can see that it's fully maintained and costing us 1 ducat a month. It's a level 2 fort. There's a garrison of 2,000 people, and those aren't in use at the moment. When we're in war, we can have a look at those. Long and short of it is that you can click on that and then select one of your allies in a war and set it as their objective. Whether or not they listen to you is a different situation, which I've never managed to find a complete explanation to. And you can use this to watch how the siege progression is going on a particular province. We discussed trade power before briefly, but I'm not going to go into it too much. This explains where the trading goes. So the trading that this province does occurs in the English Channel trade node, and England has the most power there. If we have a look here, we'll see that this goes to the Champagne trade node, and I think that's it. The easiest way to check is this, actually. So trade node, yeah, so those are all in Champagne, those are all in the English Channel. Back to normal view, and what's that? That doesn't become active until later on, so we can ignore that one. Actually, can we see it? Where is Champagne? There. No, okay. So we can't see it for the moment, but we can examine that later on. Trade good is shown when you click on the place. Each trade good has a different amount of value. Grain is only worth 2. Cloth is worth 3. Grain 2. Cloth 3. Steel, iron 3. 3. 2. 3. Yeah, salt's worth 3 as well. So an important thing to consider when you're thinking about where to spend monarch points in developing a province is how much the trade good is worth. Particularly, I mean, spending monarch points on tax anywhere is a good idea. That will increase at a fairly even amount. I can't show you because I spent it all before trying to get the damn burgers on side, get the damn burgers enough influence, but yeah, you can spend that wherever you like. It'll make sense. You can spend, if you spend your military monarch points on locations which are controlled by the nobles, you'll see a better return for their bonus to manpower, of local manpower modifier bonus. So I'll typically, I don't often spend monarch points in developing provinces because there's far better things to spend them on, as we saw earlier. Technologies, ideas, legitimacy, coring. There's a million things that you can spend your monarch points on, but sometimes you'll end up with a case where you have to spend them because otherwise they'll be lost. If we scroll over here, we can see you can only keep 999 power saved. That's a situation that will occur sometimes if you play the way I do sometimes. So spending them on development is a really good idea. But spending them wisely is also a consideration. So long and short of spending monarch points on development is spend admin in places with a low value commodity, because spending your Diplo points there wouldn't make sense. You want to spend your Diplo points where there's an expensive goods being produced. And when spending military points, look to your nobles. That will likely do this. No, I should explain this. So there is a couple of different views that you can have. We'll close this, we'll click on a province, and this is what province view looks like normally. You can click here and it will show you the institutions that are available. When an institution is being embraced, it will show you the progression and it will tell you what you can do to increase that. It'll give you hints on how to increase the institution spread, as will the institution view proper. When you scroll over that, you can see the modifiers. When that becomes available, there'll be a modifier type there, but those aren't visible until it's alive, until the institution has spawned. The other view that you may want to look at, that's right, for places that have modifiers, for provinces that have modifiers, the modifiers will show here. So we've got extra unrest because we increased our autonomy. If we have a look, I don't imagine we should have any modifiers being in the middle of nowhere, but if we go down to Africa, we can see that there's modifiers for an arid state, for increased coring, for extra attrition. So there's modifiers when you're scrolling over states. If we were to select our units and look over here, no, it doesn't tell us. We do actually need to look into the thing itself. Yes, that supply limit's reduced because it's an arid state, but it's also more expensive. There's all sorts of different things going on in different areas, in different areas of the world, but we'll talk about those when we see them. The last point of provinces is the buildings. To build a new building, you click on a blank spot, and you choose the building that you want to build. This all looks quite grievous. The only thing we can build at the moment because of our level of technology is fort rather. Yeah, castle, yeah. But we don't need that, we've already got plenty and they cost lots to maintain. So we're going to save our money for when we get some things which are cheaper and do bonuses to our production, to our taxation, and to our trade. These three are the three main buildings that I'll always look to, the building sets rather, that I'll always look to get in as many states as I can. That basically explains everything in here. Should explain that you can't build any buildings here because you can only, we don't have enough slots. You can see the white border there, as opposed to here with the green border we can build there. We can only build one building Is that correct? Yeah, we can only build one building. That doesn't seem right. Why isn't that letting us? Oh, because we've got no the technologies. We haven't unlocked any other buildings. We've built every building that we can due to our number of buildings, but we've got 3 free slots. Here we've got 4 slots. We could build another fort here. In fact, that wouldn't be a bad place to build a fort. But forts are a whole nother... forts have area of influence around them, which means that if... We'll talk about that later. That's far too tricky. But yes, building is a matter of clicking on there, selecting the building that you want, and it will give you the option. I don't want to spend that money, so I'm not going to do it. On this side we can see the loyalty, the influence, and the percentage of states controlled by an estate. Down here we can see various other stats about the province itself. Those don't change until later in the game. Oh, sorry, there's extra building slot, there's one less building slot, things like that. Yeah, land force limit modifier, so that increases the amount of troops that we can have. But we'll continue on. We'll see if we can go more than one day into the future in our next video. Thank you so much for stopping by.